You are listening to episode 273 of At Percussion Podcast. My name is Ksenija Komljenović, and with me are my superstar co-hosts, as always, Ben Charles.
Hey, Ksenija, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Ben?
Trying to stay warm.
How is everything there? Are you frozen?
It is. Yeah, it is very cold. We're luckily we haven't had any precipitation yet, but it's 90% chance tomorrow, so I think we're going to be out all this week.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, we have a bit of
this week, I should say.
Yeah. Well, stay warm. You know, when it comes to Texas, you know that the cold is real. Winter's coming. And also we have lovely Karli Viña. Hi, Karli.
Yeah, hey, Ksenija. In case anybody is wondering, it was 79 degrees this morning. It's lovely down here in Hollywood.
Okay, Karli.
Go away, you Miami people. Go away.
I used to be that person.
And now you can hate them with, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Karli, tell us what happened in music history today.
Yeah, a couple of interesting things. The first that I'll share with you is that in 2010, on our release date, which is February 25th, right? Today is February 25th. In release world, Apple announced that it had surpassed 10 billion song downloads from the iTunes store, which is like, think about that, 10 billion songs in 2010. And of course, that was 11 years ago. The 10 billionth song was Guess Things Happen That Way by Johnny Cash. And I would love to play a little snippet of this for you, but I think we'd probably get flagged, so I won't. But if you feel inclined to celebrate the 10 billionth iTunes download, you can check out Guess Things Happen That Way by Johnny Cash. So I looked a little bit like what were some of the milestones for iTunes, thinking like, what is the scale of this? iTunes was launched on April 28th, 2003. And to start, the store only had 200,000 tracks available for download, and only Mac users could buy the tracks and then, of course, transfer music to their iPods. So for anybody that doesn't know or doesn't remember, this is an iPod. Remember the little spinny wheel and the black and white screen and all that? This was my iPod that got me through so many walks and bus rides around Boston back in 2009. But anyway, so you had to download the music from iTunes and then like transfer it to your iPod. 6 months later, in October of 2003, iTunes for Windows was released, and then people with PCs could also use it. So big deal. But imagine 6 months, only Mac users. And then in 2004, they started launching in Europe and Canada, and global launches continued in the coming years. And the iTunes store became the most widespread digital music service in the world. So a couple of benchmark achievements for iTunes over the years. They had 70 million songs sold in the first year. 1 million music videos were sold 20 days after videos were introduced in 2005. And like, think about that. People were buying music videos and watching them on their iPods. I can only assume I wasn't cool enough to have an iPod in 2005. I was a little late to this technology, but think about that. 1 million music videos were sold. In 2006, 1 billion songs had been downloaded, and iTunes constituted 88% of legal music downloads in the US. I don't know what percentage of all music downloads, because I still think at that time people were using Napster and LimeWire? I don't know. Anyway, 88% of legal music downloads in the US. In 2007, iTunes was the most popular place to download movies, which I guess I don't think I ever downloaded a movie from iTunes, but I kind of see that 2 million movies were sold. In 2008, they reached the milestone of 4 billion songs had been downloaded, and they became the second largest retailer of digital music in the US. And then in 2010, this is where our 10 billion songs were downloaded, with Johnny Cash being the 10 billionth artist there. And of course, in 2015, iTunes was rebranded to Apple Music, which is what they say, like Apple was kind of recognizing the future of music is streaming rather than paying 99 cents per song and loading it on your little iPod there. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Seeing these years too, though, I was thinking, I think it was 2008 when I got an iPod, and it was like so cool, and I was like downloading my little NPR podcasts and loading them up before I had a long walk or a car ride or something like that. But anyway, so that's the news on iTunes today. I do have one more important piece of news today. in the year 2000. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, are not watching on YouTube, maybe check it out. But in 2000, it was announced that Britney Spears has been in the news lately, right? Thought it was relevant, would be releasing her own brand of bubblegum, which is Britney Spears CD player bubblegum in March of, well, in here it says March of 2000, but it came up as news for today, February 25th. So here's what it looked like. It looked like a little, remember those CD players? I had one of those too.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so there it is. That's big news day today, February 25th.
I will publicly admit now that my colleague Heather Hawk told me that I had to watch the Britney Spears documentary on Hulu. And so I literally was just practicing watching that before the podcast. Yeah, it's interesting. Like she really was someone that there's this sort of trope of like the child star that fell into abuse by a system, and she definitely was that, and we're seeing the results of it today. So
yep. Well, back when bullying was still young but strong, internet bullying especially. Yeah, well, thank you so much, Karli. That was a lot of great information, especially for percussionists. You will never forget that Britney Spears snippet of information. Awesome. So I now have the privilege to introduce our guest today, and he is a rising star from Portugal. He has won the TROMP International Percussion Competition 2020, so the latest, at just 22 years old. Not only did he win the first prize, but he also won the press prize and the Friends of TROMP Audience Award. But that's not where his awards end. He has also won first prizes at the Portuguese Young Musicians Contest with his Duo Metropolitana, and then the first international percussion competition from Beira Interior, and then Gondomar International Percussion Competition, and was named the 2016 Portuguese Young Musician of the Year. So he is currently a student at Conservatory of Amsterdam and was an exchange student at, and here is a bad attempt of a French accent, the Conservatoire National Supérieur Musique et Danse de Lyon. Everyone, please welcome the fabulous Agostinho Sequeira.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me here. It's a big pleasure, and very good pronunciation of all of the words.
Thank you so much. Your name is very important. I had no help for the French long school name, so we'll see how that goes. Ben, would you like to start us off with something?
How about this segue? Well, speaking of schools, I noticed that you have a recording of the piece Homework by, again, pardon my bad pronunciation, but François Sarhan, something like that. And it's a piece that I've seen a couple people play. I know Garrett Mendelow plays it, but it seems to be sort of one of those pieces that's sort of brewing, and people will start playing this in years to come. But it's such a wild, bizarre ride of a piece. Could you tell us about how you encountered it and what it was like to play that piece?
Yeah, so yeah, it is a bizarre piece. It's funny because before playing that piece, I actually played another piece by François Sarhan that is not actually as known as Homework. It's a piece for prepared marimba and voice. And it's like also, it's called I Don't Belong to Your World. And it's also very nice and very like kind of intense and extreme. And after that I played Homework. It was actually in preparation for ARD in Munich in 2019. So yeah, I mean, I always like this kind of pieces that has a lot of you have to put basically all of yourself in it. Like it's like in the limit of between a percussion piece or a theater performance. So that's like this barrier that is kind of hard to find. Where is the limit between each other, or is there any limit at all? Yeah, but in that sense, is a piece that I felt kind of very comfortable doing it, because it's kind of it's very personal, the way that you express yourself, and it's very connected to the body. So you don't have like a stick that is like there is some distance when you play like marimba or vibraphone or setup, because we have a stick separating you from the instrument. And in that piece, it's like you are the instrument, so it's very connected and it's very yeah, it's very, in a way, it's very playful, but it's also quite hard to learn, you know, and to synchronize the voice with the body and the rhythm and all that stuff. But once you know it, I think it's very fun to play it if you like that kind of, yeah, piece.
What? How is it? How is it notated?
It's actually it's very well notated. It's kind of setup notation in a way. And on top of the notes, he writes what you have to say, also with the rhythm. So it's the notation is kind of good to understand. I remember when I played also Silence Must Be some years ago, and the notation is much. It's not really notated, you know. It's like you have instructions that you follow, and the piece is not even edited, or at least by the time it was not edited when I played. So it was kind of a mess to be able to play it in a competition because it was not edited, and you need to have like the original score to play. So I had to write Jean-Geoffroy by the time, and he gave me like the authorization to play the piece, you know. So in that sense, the François Sarhan piece is it's easier to read and to understand what is the material and so on. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd love to go to your most recent accomplishment. And we had Kai Strobel on the show fairly recently, and he told us a bit about preparing for his concert. But that's one level, his virtual holographic concert. That's one level of stress. I cannot imagine where you have to compete against so many people in so many countries with so many different circumstances, and you do so virtually. Can you walk us through how that worked for you? How were the recording sessions? How did you organize all of that? How was that for you mentally, physically, everything?
Yes, so like I was kind of in the middle of a huge mess because the day before TROMP started, like the competition itself, because the thing is that I don't know, probably people don't know this, but TROMP developed a special app to do the competition.
Yeah.
And it was like we couldn't send like old recordings. We had like a time frame to record the pieces and to upload in the app, you know. And then it's like you have this time frame, so you have to record in that time frame. So basically the day before the first day of recordings, Emmanuel Macron he decreted like the lockdown in France. So and in the measures that he said, like the conservatoire was not open.
Oh.
So I basically ran into my phone and bought a train ticket to Amsterdam. Yeah, and basically the day, like 24 hours after, I was like packing all my stuff to go to Amsterdam, and I went there, but then I had to be like 1 day quarantine, like because I had to take the negative test, you know, to be able to enter in the conservatory. So, and in all this period, TROMP was already happening, you know, and I was like moving and in a train and doing tests and home waiting for the result and etc. Yeah, and so then for first round, then the other problem came, that was like the part of building the setup, you know, because I had the setup in Lyon, and then I arrived to Amsterdam, and I had to kind of try to figure out how to build the setup more or less the same that I had in Lyon, but of course with other instruments and so on.
Yeah.
And also the vibraphone, but that's kind of easier to adapt and so on. But yeah, so the first round was kind of a mess, you know. So I actually didn't have many days to record. I had like two recording sessions. But in that sense, it was also kind of good in the sense that I had a short time. So I really had to go for it, you know. I couldn't, like when I was performing, it was like almost as live performance because I didn't have so much time to redo it and all of that, you know. So I was like, and the rooms were all booked, so I only had like from 10 until midnight to record. And that was some point, it's like, okay, I have to record it now. And it's like full in one take and like, yeah, just live performance. And in that sense, like in the moment, I was like, oh, this is kind of bad. But now that I look back, maybe it also helped to, to have like a recording with a live performance. So yeah, and then
Wow.
But then for Asanga was kind of okay, the setup, because it's more compact. But the problem was the semi-final with 13 drums. That's kind of a nightmare. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it was kind of a nightmare to build all the setup. And I mean, 13 drums, it's a piece that can easily turn into 13 reams, if you
Yeah.
not used to it. So, and then to the final, it was like very short notice between rounds, actually. But that's kind of live competition also. It was like this. And again, the setup of the concerto, I had to build everything again in Amsterdam. So that was kind of like it was like kind of live competition. I felt that a bit, because if you go there live, you don't, well, I kind of knew the instruments, but it was not the same. But when you go live, you have new instruments, and that's kind of, I feel that's also like it's more playful when you're performing, because you discover different new things, because you have new instruments. If you record already the same instruments, the same room for already like 2 months or something, it's kind of gets a bit boring. Then when you have something and like you are kind of nervous to don't miss because you are not sure where the instruments are, it gives much more adrenaline. And that's what I miss from this online competition. And then I managed to have it in different ways.
The excitement really hit the spot. Yeah, so you actually did have a full competition experience with you. Almost the only thing that you were missing was to be jet lagged, I think, and then that was it.
But I wouldn't even have that.
Yeah. Well, that's fabulous. We have the man of the hour joined, Casey Cangelosi. Welcome to your own podcast, man.
Hey, I decided to show up.
Well, so happy to see you.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
We're having a fantastic conversation here about the latest TROMP. But I'd love to talk about it a little bit more, Agostinho. How was it to perform virtually with an orchestra? Like, how do you do that? How do you be a holographic soloist in front of an ensemble?
Well, it was very weird, because the thing is that what we did was that I don't know if this was supposed to say, because they want like people to kind of think that we were actually playing live with the orchestra, but of course we were not, So basically what happened is that like Sunday was the final, and then on Thursday before they sent like professional team to record us, and we had to record in a place. It was actually the same with Kai and the trio. We had to record in a place that was all black, like a black box. So then they could transfer like the image to the hologram screen. So that was kind of, and we had to record with a click track, and then the orchestra also played with the click track, the ensemble, and it somehow worked. But yeah, it was kind of, I miss that a lot, because that's something that I enjoy a lot to do, to play with orchestra, like solo and with ensemble and so on. And I had that experience in the past, and I was very looking forward to do it with the Asko Schoenberg ensemble. And that was kind of a bummer, because then it was just like I played and they played, and then it all went together. But it was also nice to see, like, because we had the MIDI of the orchestra part, but recorded with the click track. It's kind of hard to make music with that. Especially because there is no like this connection with the orchestra, like here you can let go a bit, or you can go push a bit, so it was quite like you couldn't move almost, But yeah, but in the end I think it worked as well as it would be possible for them to make it.
Oh, absolutely. For such a pioneering event, it was fabulous. It was incredible. But did you not get to, I guess that would be too much work, but normally you would, if you're preparing for such a part of a competition, you would get to talk to the conductor, and of course they would tailor for every finalist. Everyone would perform a little bit differently, so they would have different tempo markings for every performer. I guess you didn't have any of that. It was like everybody gets the same, here you go, play.
Yeah, basically, because also it was kind of, the piece was hard because it also had like a lot of bar changes and stuff like this, you know, and there was not so much space, especially if you play with the click track, to do this kind of stuff. Or it could have, like, it could have happened, but then they would have to like adapt the click track to every candidate, you know, and that's kind of, that it was like very short time, and then it was kind of tricky. But it was a pity because, I mean, this interaction between soloist and orchestra and conductor, it's like really the fun part of it, you know. But I hope in the future I can still play with them.
One thing that comes up a lot in these like 2020, 2021 sort of discussions is like, okay, well, we've proven that we can do a competition this way, so do we still need to do everyone flies to the same place in the future? And like, that's not just only music competitions. Like a lot of workplaces are now going virtual only in the future and things like that. For me personally, I still think there's merit to doing it the old way. I think that this is a good way to do it in a tight situation where we can't get out. But do you think that in the future competitions should be held this way, or should they be held the old way? And I'll say that one thing that is nice about this way is it actually removes a lot of barriers. Like a lot of people that either couldn't schedule a flight to, you know, wherever at that time, or couldn't afford to go or something like that. I guess it can open doors for those people, but I still, maybe I'm old fashioned, but I like the old way better.
No, I mean, I think it would be, this was great, but it's just for this situation, you know, like this is not a good way to do it. I mean, it's not the ideal way to do it, you know? But in that sense, in terms of like, TROMP is very supportive because they, to people that are coming from, I don't know, other continents, they also give money for them to come, you know. And like in Eindhoven, they give, you have like housing because they do partnerships with families, so you don't have to pay a hotel or something, you know. So they really arrange that people don't have that barriers to come and play. But I mean, it would, I think it would be very bad if this starts to be like more usual, because music in general, I mean, you cannot really do it like via streaming, you know. Like it's kind of, the thing is like the heat, you know, in the moment, and the human connection between performer and the audience, and like the hall and all that stuff, that's like the magic of it. Then if we all do it like this, stream and recording, is kind of, it loses the fun, I think. And I don't think that it will be like this in the future, so hopefully not.
Yeah, and I guess like one thing you said that sort of answered my question, I've never really thought about it, is like, we've had recording technology for like over 100 years now, and we still have live performance. Like it's the fact that you can reproduce it digitally doesn't replace the sort of energy of being there in person. It is different, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had like last week, I had a concert, I had a gig here in Amsterdam, and it was live stream. And I never had like a live stream, and it's very weird because it's like you have to play live, but it's not this live thing that the moment is there and then it vanishes, you know, the music vanishes and it stays on people's like memory and so on. But it's also not a recording that you have like this kind of possibility to do it again and to make it better, you know. So it's like kind of, you have to make it live, but then it stays forever like in the dark web or so on, you know. And it's like, it's kind of very stressing, you know. But
it's the worst.
So scary.
No one claps.
so weird.
Like I've seen a live stream recital where the performer, you know, finishes whatever piece and then they just bow to silence and then walk to the next instrument.
Yeah, and this time we even had we had an encore, and then we arrived to the end, and it was like, are we doing this? And it was like, yeah, no, we are not doing this, you know. It's like weird. So we just stopped the concert and we went home.
What about a playback track, like a fake audience, you know?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Like just
I mean-
roaring applause after every piece live streamed.
they are doing that in the football games. They do that. Right?
That's
They
right.
Put,
Right.
they put like the crowd and like
Just
there's
steal that
Really?
same
empty.
NFL audience. Yeah.
Wait, really?
Yeah, they're pumping fake noise into athletic events. Yeah.
Well, it's like if you watch the Daily Show or those kind of shows that don't have that background, like they don't have a laugh track after jokes.
Mhm.
It's really weird. The jokes are way less funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I remember, like Bill Maher says something controversial, and then you don't hear, and it's a joke, and you don't hear a laugh track afterwards. You feel like, ooh, they didn't like that. It's like, no, there's no audience. There's no sound either way.
There's actually an article. I don't know if it's musically relevant. Maybe I'll report it on the future. But there's this website I like called Tedium, and they have a whole article about laugh tracks. Check that out sometime.
It's cool.
Ben and his tedium. I'll use a laugh track for my recital then. Instead of applause, I'll just use a laugh track after every piece. It'll bring the spirits up.
What we could do is use a laugh track at inappropriate times on this show. Like we could edit it in.
Could be fun.
We
Yeah.
just edit Pius's picture, and that's what we do at inappropriate times.
Wait till the next time I edit an episode.
That was a good one, Ben. All right, I'm sorry, big tangent.
All right, so Agostinho, to wrap up the conversation about TROMP, what has TROMP brought you in your life? Now, these are different times, and obviously they help with management. Did you buy your mansion with all that money, or did you spend it celebrating, or also in terms of just contacts and what to do with yourself musically now? How have they helped you?
Yeah. So as you said, it's kind of a strange time now to kind of see what real profit or benefit I can actually get from them. But actually I did add like some invitations that I think I wouldn't have if I wouldn't get the first prize in TROMP, especially in Holland, because the competition was here. Yeah, it's kind of a big thing here. So in that sense, yeah, I think it really helped to get a boost for people to know me and to call me for things, because I'm not in my country, and then it can get a bit more difficult, because of language barrier and etc. But they are very supportive. Like they have a very good management support and marketing. So basically all the stuff that I do, like I had a meeting with the marketing leader of TROMP, and we discussed some stuff, and she told me like, yeah, everything you do, we will also like share and try to promote your work and stuff like this, which of course now is kind of not as much as I would like to, but still they do their best, and I also do my best to do stuff. And yeah, let's see. I hope like in the next year it will be better. I had the concert here with the solo with the ballet orchestra in Amsterdam, which was cancelled, and we are trying to arrange a tour to Russia on next season. But let's see also how that goes with all the situations. So I'm like praying a lot for this to get better soon.
Yeah. Oh, it will certainly help. It's just going to be a delayed response. I mean, nobody's getting anything these times, so it'll come. Right. I was just going to add a little thing. I was listening to an interview with Gary Grafman, who is the piano professor of Yu Zhuang and Lang Lang, and he was talking about how he did not allow them to compete. And when the interviewer asked him why, he said, well, they don't need to, because I know so many conductors and I just invite them to come listen to them, and then they get engagements. For a fantastic student, another student that he had, he said, I brought in some conductors, they heard them, and they didn't get engagements in the next 2 years. So, okay, they went and won the Clyburn competition, and then they had engagements. And I thought how interesting that was, that, this elite of the piano has the possibility to skip competitions, because that's, quote unquote, according to this man, it's a waste of time, because they should be learning other repertoire at a different pace, as opposed to, you know, being prepared for a competition now and for one in 6 months, because you can't do a competition every month. Obviously, that's going to spend you. But he would just arrange meetings with really important people, with managers and conductors, to hear them, because he's a big shot. And that would be their entry into the big stages. And I thought, wow, I don't know of any percussionist who gets the chance to do that. Everybody has to go through a competition, sort of, or be the Justin Bieber, like Casey Cangelosi, and then you don't have to compete. Yeah. But Casey, why did you compete when you were young? Did that bring you things?
Not like this. A lot of state competitions, you know, it was pretty routine to go to PAS state competitions. Utah was a really happening scene. So yeah, it was like since high school and through college, you know, every year we'd carpool. My mom would take a carload of us, maybe even in middle school too. I feel like I did it a few times in middle school. I wish I was a little more competition aware back then, but arguably probably TROMP and probably these competitions didn't exist, at least not for us. The one international thing I ever did, or national, I guess it's only national, was Music Teachers National Association.
Mm-hmm.
I beat the hell out of them.
Of course you did.
Yeah, we should talk about that sometime. Just savage.
Bet you wish you could go back to that middle school competition circuit now. You'd kick ass.
I'd kick some ass. Yeah, my diddles are cleaner now.
I just thought that was really interesting how all the great percussionists have to go sort of through this route if they want to become soloists, especially, you know, concert soloists, and how this exists, I guess, for all the other instruments. So we still have ways to push.
I don't know that that's always true. Like, I mean, there are certainly the Geneva competition winners and things you hear about, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I don't know of like Evelyn Glennie and Colin Curry being huge competition winners. I know of.
Also, Martin Grubinger. I don't think he also.
I'm
not sure. No, I don't want to like.
Could be kind of a generational thing too. You know that now it's so much more common that this is a more common route to go.
It's a faster track for sure.
Ago, maybe not as much.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know if they were even there, you know, I'm 39, you know, so I was,
Well, and I think also maybe U.S. percussionists weren't going over, but I mean, like in what was it, 91, 92, something, there was the Lee Howard Stevens marimba competition. I mean, there have been competitions, but I think the U.S. participation in the European competitions has heated up in recent years. But also another, like, I would consider big name, like Cameron Leach he's not a TROMP competitor or anything like that. He's a upcoming star here. So
well, he's won the PAS.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I don't think of American competitions as the same like scale as the elite Euro competitions, I guess.
I agree with Karli. I think it's age specific and generational. Like people who are like my age, like when I was at that age, if just to give you guys some perspective, The Rite of Spring had just premiered. When I was that's like where percussion was at. So, you know.
All right. I take that back. That wasn't smart. That wasn't all throughout, you know, thought throughout. But I definitely see this in, as you mentioned, in the younger generation, like No Simone Rubino, Kai, they all had to win something.
It's definitely very much, it's a faster track, I think, than trying to work your way up. Like that's.
Yeah. I mean, like, would you recommend doing it to a student? I mean, of course, you know, yeah, sure, definitely do it, and especially if you want to perform. You know, it's like the big question is always, how do I make those connections? How do I get those contracts? How do I get booked? And it's like, yeah, well, fast track right into that. You know, I'm sorry I came in late to the episode, but yeah, y'all were talking about management. It's like, how do you connect with management right away? Well, there's I guess a way, you know.
Well, you know, actually in the episode where we talked to Tomer Yariv from Percussion, they said that their rise to fame was when they had 10 minutes of Zubin Mehta's time, and then he stayed for a full hour recital and then picked them up. But I've never heard of that happening anywhere else. And they too are a little bit to the older generation. I just don't see that percussionists have a lot of conductors and managers' ears. Like if I was a person of influence so that I could invite conductors to listen to my students. I just don't hear that happening a lot, I guess.
Well, and isn't that because you know, the same reason it's hard to get new pieces of music programmed? You know, it's just like for every Brahms violin concerto, like how many Schwantner concertos with Evelyn Glennie are there? You know, it's like, what do you think? Is he think it's 1,000 to 1? You think it's 2,000 to 1? I mean, I don't know, but it's probably that same thing. You know, we talk so much about getting diverse composers, getting new music. And I think also percussionists, like we're all in that same little clump of challenge.
I just had one quick anecdote, and actually I would like to get back to our guest with maybe an Instagram question, but there's speaking of generational, there's the Jonathan Haas anecdote about, I guess the early 80s. He went to compete, and you know, he applied and wrote his letter and all. They said, and you know, he said, I'm a timpani soloist and I'd like to compete. And they said, oh, sorry, Mr. Haas, we only have a competition for musical instruments.
Right. Right.
That's so bad.
I want to be a John Haas student just for that. Like, you know, you're doing a timpani lesson and be like, wait, you want me to play this? No, I only want to play instruments. Sorry.
Musical instruments, yeah.
Musical instruments, that's right. Now, he told us that story on the show. It's so cool, just how far the perspective has come, you know.
Well, while we're talking still about competitions and your experience, Agostinho, with TROMP and everything, we have 2 Instagram questions that relate. The first is from Maralena Moreira Rato, and she asks, how do you study during quarantine? And especially, I'm sure, during quarantine and the pandemic, how are you preparing for a competition? And then another similar kind of related question from Matteo Renzi Percussion. He says, how did you manage to work and prepare such a huge repertoire for the competition? So I guess let's combine them. How did you manage to work and prepare such a huge repertoire for the competition during a pandemic?
I have to be honest, I think it was actually kind of easier, you know, because the world was stopped, you know. You were not like receiving mails and like things from like everywhere, you know. For me, it was like really a nice moment to close a bit myself in the practice room and like discover new stuff, you know, because it's not so often that you have that amount of time. And like at some point in March, April, it looked like the world time was like floating, you know, like not going anywhere. And that was like a really nice time to really practice. Like sometimes we play a lot and we like learn a lot of pieces, but like it's not so often that we have a lot of time to like really close up in our instrument and try to really think about like details, like how does this work for me, and so on. Yeah, so in that sense, the quarantine was kind of well, I should say it the other way around, like to be preparing for a competition and so on was kind of a good escape for the quarantine and for COVID and all that stuff, you know, because it made my mind kind of in another place. So that was great. And about the repertoire, yeah, it's kind of I build that repertoire throughout years, you know. It's not like I decided all the program 6 months before and I suddenly practice all the pieces and I play them, you know. So in that sense, I kind of combine pieces that I played in the past and pieces that I learned also recently. But I think when you do a competition, it's also kind of a lot of time management and try to be clever in the pieces that you choose, in the sense that you have to know yourself and know, yeah, this piece I know I can play well, this piece I know I cannot play so well. I think sometimes people think too much about like what is the jury going to think about or stuff like this. But in the end, if you go in this kind of feeling, it will never be like a very good performance, because if you are not completely like convinced about the pieces that you play, and if you don't love the music that you play, that will come out very easily when you perform. So that was why it was kind of easy to choose the repertoire for me, because I always or mostly played pieces that I loved like in the past year. So I kind of picked the ones that I felt it would make sense in this context. So like I didn't learn a lot of new music for TROMP especially.
Well, I think what you just said is really important. You weren't just, okay, I'm going to go for this competition and I'm going to start learning everything from scratch now. That you're preparing for the competition even before you know the specifics of what you're going to go for, because you're working in those directions.
Yeah, and I played the pieces like in recitals and concerts and that, and it's like in the end the competition is one more stage. It's like, okay, you are being judged, but you are also being judged when you play live for people. And it's
Right.
even, I mean, for me, it's much more important that like I get more nervous when I have to play to my mom or something like this, because it's like, it's, but of course I respect all the juries and all that stuff, but it's so subjective that you just have to go for your thing, and if they like, they like it. If they don't like, then yeah, that's like.
Yeah, nice.
Send a letter to Mike Burritt saying, Mike, you're not half as scary as my mom when I play for you. Grubinger, sorry, my mom beats you any day.
Yeah. No, but I mean, also in that sense, like, because what we were talking about, I think for me, what helped me a lot, it was that I didn't do competitions when I was very young, like 9, 10 years old. I was just, until I was like 15, 16, I was just playing, not like competing with other people or so on. And I think from also people that I talk nowadays, that people had like very kind of bad experience when they were like 8 years old, like they went to a competition and then they forget the music or something like this, and then that gets like in the system for very long, and it's very hard after to be able to recover from that. In that sense, I think I'm very thankful that I didn't put myself in that kind of situation when I was younger. I was just playing for fun and because I enjoyed playing. Yeah, and later on when I was like 15, 16, then I started to go to that kind of pressure. But also I think with competitions is also a matter of experience. Like I had the luck to, the first experience that I had was very positive. It was like a duo competition, and then we shared a lot and we like become really like best friends, and and then it gave such a beautiful meaning to the music and then the work we have done and so on. So in that sense, like all the competitions that I did afterwards, it was always with this kind of positive thing in mind. Like I'm doing this, like I'm trying to become better, like from myself to myself. And then yeah, then it's always like a positive mood when I go to a competition. It's not never like oh, I'm getting like tested or something like this, because so in that sense I think it's also a lot about personal experience on. Yeah.
Do you have any advice as to like where that mindset comes from? Because I like, of course, that's such a good mindset, and we've had other competition winners say the same thing. Like, I think it was Alice Pan said, you got to think of competitions not as like, oh, I just have this like one competition I got to do, and it's this huge thing, and no, it's just like part of being being a performer. Like, competitions just, they come and go, and you can't dwell too much on any one of them. But yeah, that's such a healthy mindset. Do you know where that came from for you?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was maybe because like the experience that I had, they were good. I had the luck like to be prize winner and so on, and then that gives like kind of a good, feeling to it. But I think it's also like what I do a lot of times when I'm nervous. Like I put things into like I don't know if this word in English makes sense. I like relativize. Put things in perspective, basically. Like when I go to a concert or to a competition, like what is actually the worst thing that can happen, and I realized many times the worst thing that can happen is not that bad. Okay, so you have a bad day, so you don't go through the competition, like so what. I always feel like, yeah, it's kind of that's life. But I think it's also about people, when they go to the competition, they already have to trust themselves, in the sense that trust that the music that they are doing is good. It's something that will touch people. And if it, like, we of course, like, oh, everyone says competition, like it's very subjective, jury, blah blah, but they also know that it can like affect a lot when you get like a bad experience or a bad comment. But in that sense, I think it's all like, it's kind of mindset of putting things in perspective, you know, it's a percussion competition, you know, it's not that important if you think about it. You know, it's like, it's great if you can get something out of it, but in the end that's not. And again, competitions are very, it's like cycles, you know, because you win a competition and then next edition someone wins it, and then you have to do your road by yourself and do your projects and develop your thing, and you have to do that already before you go to a competition, you know. What I always said is like, I had like a line that it was like, it's layers, you know. You had like a big line that's stuff that you want to do in the future, and then to the layers you add stuff that can help you to achieve that line. And competitions are, as you said, like one way, like a kind of fast track. But if you don't win, it doesn't mean that you cannot reach the big line that you were thinking about, you know. It's just different. And I mean, there are so wonderful musicians that don't even apply to a competition, you know. It's like, because it's not for not everybody has to do it, you know. And like, yeah, it's just, you have to know yourself and know like if to go to a competition will bring something positive to you, and if you ever know and some people say like a bad comment to you, you have to know yourself to know that you will kind of get the point of like, why did you pass, and work on that. That was basically what happened to me in ARD, you know. I got into the last 8, but then I didn't pass, and then I got some comments, and then I kind of you have to filter the comments, you know. Some stuff you have to throw away because it's not useful, and then you have to pick that thing that will actually help you in the future, and then just work on that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so to get to another Instagram question here, we had a question from, pardon my pronunciation, Joel Valpacos, who says, who is your favorite composer? And I guess we could maybe ask a related question of what is it that makes you like a composer?
I do not have a favorite composer. I'm sorry. I cannot name one composer that is favorite composer. The things that I like a lot of kind of music, you know. I think like every style you can easily recognize when it's good music, you know. And that's, for me, that's most important than the style itself, you know. It can be baroque music or super modern music or jazz music or whatever, you know. Like you can recognize when it's actually music made with content and like with thought behind, you know. And that's what I think, for me, it's kind of most important. Also, I don't know, like for instance, my timpani teacher Nick Wout, he always tell, like, I had this discussion with him sometimes, and he told me once a thing that he said, like, the Beatles, they have a Mozart quality inside, you know. And in that sense, I think that a lot of music from different styles, different composers have a lot of, it's just, you can hear when it's the music made like with you know, it's good music. And I always like to play different styles. That's why, and for instance, also in TROMP, I also choose that was like one of the comments of the jury, that I chose a very wide range of repertoire, you know. And that's why, because for me, the style, it's just one thing to be aware when you play it, but it's not like something that I will pick, you know. So I prefer to play like a very good baroque composer than to play like a bad modern composer, you know. It's just, yeah, that's how it goes, I think.
So just to follow up on being able to play different styles, I saw you performing with Renier Bass, a relief party, where you played marimba for an hour with a full band and just like jammed. How much is jazz infusion and that type of language in you? How was that? Do you love to perform that? Do you regularly do that? How does that work?
I never played in a jazz band before. And then Rainer Bass is a jazz guitar, and he made this whole project was commissioned by Bimhaus, and it was all new music by him. He wrote all the program, and he wanted to add a marimba, you know? And again, like this was one of the moments that winning TROMP helped, you know, because he saw that I won the competition and he saw some videos and then called me to do it. And I was kind of stressed, you know, because I never played in a jazz band. And I was like, oh, you know, what if he asks me to improvise, blah, blah, you know, which he actually did. And then I was like, then I couldn't say really no, you know, so I was like, yeah, why not, you know. At some point I was like, I mean, we are classical trained, and it's such a pity that sometimes we don't have this skill to play in our instrument, you know, to improvise, to scope. And yeah, but it was a great week. I think it was like a kind of a model how concerts can work, in the sense that, like, to make the project, we all made a COVID test, and so it was negative test, and I think that gave a really nice different atmosphere to the rehearsal space, you know, because I guess you all have been in rehearsals with a mask and people kind of a bit afraid, and with this kind of approach, and everybody knew that no one was sick, although it's not like 100% sure, but you know, it gives another kind of feeling to the rehearsals, and it was great to play that kind of music. It's such a different mood and different feeling and different kind of rehearsing, and they were all amazing musicians, and it was, for me, it was easier to fit in such good people, you know, when everyone around you is great. It's like, it's so easy, you know? So yeah, it was nice experience.
It's a fabulous concert. It's on YouTube. You folks should check it out. And that's, I mean, I asked because you looked very comfortable, and I was like, do you play marimba in a jazz band all the time? I mean, that's why. But it was, and your solo, I mean, it was like amazing. You went ham, like it was crazy. It was fantastic. Okay, so another thing that we had scheduled for today is to talk about a little article from USA Today. Now, I'm not very well acquainted with this periodical and magazine, but it seems to me like it's not perhaps has the highest echelon of intellect that they try to cater to, which is why I picked it to talk about it. Anyway, the title of the article was Meet the Under 40 Years Old, I guess, musicians who are making classical instruments cool. So I looked it up, and of course, here I am. I'm now going to be a jerk again. It's hard to find meaningful, good articles about music, it turns out, at least these days, something that's new. So basically, the article listed a bunch of people under 40 who are doing their best to keep instruments such as the violin, piano, and cello front and center in music lovers' mind. Well, thank you. Yes, we've known about these for many, many centuries. And then they mention how some folks get to have a huge impact on music. For example, they think of Lizzo and how it appears that like the interest in flute has spiked so much since she has risen to stardom. So, okay. The article then listed a lot of these people's careers in numbers. So there goes Lindsay Sterling. We all know her, the great YouTube sensation. And then it says age 34, worked with Pentatonics. 12.8 million YouTube subscribers. And then you're like, okay, well, this person is very reasonably considered to be famous. Then there is a Charlie Siem, who I have not heard about before. Definitely not heard from him before, who is 35 and is a model and violinist who has a billionaire father and a family of artists and has played with Miley Cyrus and Bryan Adams. And also you keep reading and then it's like, okay, and Dior and Armani and Hugo Boss, he didn't play with them. He's a model for them. Okay, excellent. Has 8,300 YouTube subscribers. And you're like, okay, these are different levels of impact now. Then goes Lang Lang, who's 38, who is described in this article as the J-Lo of the piano. Now, I have no idea what that means. And it says, because of his ability to transition back and forth between classical and other genres. Well, there, we just talked about that now with Agostinho Sequeira. J-Lo, I'm so glad that she is the epitome of being great at transitioning between genres, and that Lang Lang is J-Lo on piano. In any case, he's the first Chinese pianist to be engaged by the Berlin Phil and the Vienna Phil. He has 166,000 YouTube subscribers. And then they go to Trombone Shorty, who's a fabulous multi-instrumentalist who has 20,000. And then comes Laura van der Heyden, for example, cello, a 2019 Newcomer of the Year by the BBC Music Magazine Award recipient, who has less than 1,000. And then more and more of these musicians who have less than 1,000 YouTube subscribers, which not everything is measured in YouTube subscribers. We all know that, but there's a huge discrepancy between Lindsey Stirling and then everything else that's subscribed. So Ben says USA Today is actually written to, I think, a 3rd grade reading level. LOL. Definitely. I definitely think so. But I was wondering what y'all thought. Casey has frequently spoken on this topic, mentioning Neil deGrasse Tyson as an example of someone who popularizes science, but he's made to try to reel people into science, but he's not the kind of scientist that you'd go and not understand what he speaks of when he's in a conference hall. What do you all think of these superstars and all of these measuring ways of stardom, and whether that really means that they make classical music cool? Like, what is this article?
I didn't know we had to make classical music cool. I thought we were there. I mean, I think what we do is pretty cool. No, I think it's interesting, especially when we talk about I don't know, even like they're saying Lang Lang is the J-Lo of the piano because he transitions back and forth between genres. And even like when you see an orchestra that does like a pop arrangement, usually it comes across really cool, but sometimes you see it like, do we need to have that in order to get people in seats in the hall? Like, do we have to do pop music? Or do we have to, I love playing these movie soundtracks, right? When they show the movie, like Star Wars and Harry Potter, it's so fun. People love it. And it's fun to play. But do we need to have a movie on the screen to enjoy the music? So it was one thing that made me, aside from all the, questionable comparisons, and this kind of, this list is like a mash of, I don't know, I maybe I'm not aware. Does Lang Lang do any crossover, like different genres? I've never...
He's played with Metallica.
Okay, well, I didn't know that. So there it is. But the list seems like here's a bunch of people who happen to be under 40 who play quote unquote classical instruments. But anyway, I guess that's one of the things that came to mind to me, is thinking about like, how much do we want to change our art that we do to make it accessible for the masses versus let's do what we do and do it extremely well and people are gonna appreciate it. I'm not sure what the right answer is.
I think one thing that Karli's sort of hinting at a lot is like, it can be kind of campy. Like a lot of, like, even in professional per service orchestras that I've played in, like a lot of the pop concerts, it's literally like high school arrangements of Harry Potter music. It's like kind of not great. I think maybe what the article is hinting at is artists that have figured out how to present classical music in a way that makes sense in the modern world. And actually, if I could pat Ksenija on the back for an example of this, Ksenija just released a recording of remind me the name of the piece, Ksenija?
Message from the Emperor.
Message from the Emperor by Martin Bresnik. And I remember, I won't name any names, but I saw a recording of it a while back that was in sort of like, it almost looked like a band room, like a high school band room. And it just wasn't a good recording. Like, I'm not saying anything about the players, just the quality of the recording itself just sort of, I actually just disliked the piece, like based on the recording. And then I see Ksenija's recording in like this beautiful hall with like exquisite lighting and really good camera work. And like, there's actually a cinematographer and it's like all very artistically presented. It's like, oh no, I actually do like this piece. It's just presented in a way that I enjoy it. And I mean, like, I've seen like Lang Lang has like a music video of, I think it's Goldberg variations, or at least one of the Goldberg variations. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I'm of the type of person that would go to a concert hall and see him. But if I was a high schooler that didn't know anything about classical music, that would have curb appeal to me. So like, I can see the merit in figuring out how to present these things to the masses. I don't think it makes classical music any more or less cool. I think it maybe just makes it more approachable, if that makes sense.
Right, but all of it just requires a lot of money. I mean, what Lindsey Stirling does, and I really can't tell, I haven't listened to her enough besides to be informed, like seen a couple of things and it hasn't stuck with me, but all of that is just a huge production budget. It seems like if that is what appeals to people is, how it's presented. And in that case, I mean, almost anybody could do it. And especially this CM person who, I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm harping on him, but, comes from a very wealthy family and works as a model and is a violinist who plays Paganini mostly, so it's the ringtone music that everyone can recognize. And then that is like celebrated in, I guess a lot of people read USA Today. I don't know. It seems to me like it's one of those things you'd see at right next to the cash register on groceries, in grocery store lines.
It's always like almost every hotel has some USA Todays in the lobby too.
Well, there you go. Nobody keeps the BBC Music magazine there.
Right.
So, I don't know. Agostinho, what do you think of these celebrations of such performers?
Yeah, I mean, as you all said already, like it's kind of a hard topic because I understand why people try to go in that direction, but can you really call it like a classic? Well, it depends on the people, but it's like I understand why people do it, and I think even like now in conservatory, they kind of encourage people to do that more and more, which I'm not sure if I totally agree with. Like we had this one teacher that was always like saying, you need to have a Twitter, you need to have, I don't know, YouTube channel, etc., etc. But do you really need to have that to be like an happy musician? I don't think so. I mean, I think it depends on what you as a musician want to do, what you want to transmit, if you want to be like, I don't know, like a kind of a pop star playing cello, then it kind of makes money to invest a lot of budget to do this kind of videos and productions and so on. But if you are happy playing to a 5 people audience, I don't know, 1 hour of electronic music, for example, it's like, sure, you don't that. I think it's all about what each person wants to do and feels happy doing about. And yeah, in that sense, I think it's something very personal.
So our other question is from Curb Your Reed, and he says, when's the last time you practiced tambourine? Which I'm guessing there's a story there.
It's got to be a side joke.
No, there isn't. Yeah, no, Reed, he was a fellow colleague here in Amsterdam. He's student in Michigan, I think, with Doug. No, I think what he meant with the question is like, here in Amsterdam is a very orchestra-oriented school in a way. Like we have a lot of teachers, and we have, I mean, people that for me are like very relevant also in the solo scene, like Peter Prommel, Arnold Marinson, of course, and then we have also Rachel and Ramon as like kind of younger generation teachers. But indeed, I mean, a lot of people go to Amsterdam to study with the guys from the Concertgebouw Orchestra, which is kind of like one of the most important orchestras in Europe, and I guess also around the world. And I mean, it's a very hard school in terms of you really have to practice everything, which is great for a bachelor, I think, because you get really wide range of knowledge on all the instruments and so on. And of course, I have to practice a lot of tambourine, triangle, cymbals, bass drum, timpani, etc. But I have to say, it helped me a lot when I play solo repertoire. Like when I was playing 13 drums, I only could think about Nick lessons on timpani, and how to take the sound of the timpani and how to make it like legato, and it's such, and also tambourine, and the accessoire, it has such a level of detail, like the fingers, the small muscles, and all of that, and even the approach to the repertoire, like how you approach orchestra excerpt, they are so like methodic and so hard in the sense like try to get as much like most details possible, and there is a lot of like thinking about the sound of the instrument and how does it sound in the orchestra and so on. So in that sense, it helped me a lot. Like I think it improved a lot my solo playing when I started to apply this orchestra thinking and details in solo playing. So in that sense, as a reply to the question, I do still practice tambourine. So
that's good to know. Okay, last question is I reached out to a person that I thought might be a mutual friend. I reached out to Cristiano Rios, who I met in Lisbon, and I asked him to give me a funny story about you, because you're one of the rare people who doesn't have a huge, at least I couldn't find, a huge presence on social media so that I could find something funny or whatever. And he said,
I'm very careful.
you are very careful. But he said, I should ask you about funny stories when you were studying at the professional music school, that you were quite the energetic and rebel kid. So I'll ask you, he was a gentleman to not reveal any details, but I'll ask you about your times at the professional school.
Oh, you mean like, yeah, he meant like the secondary school, which
Yes.
was like before bachelor. And it's very intense. And I noticed when I came here, like to Amsterdam and so on, that it's not very common in like other countries that like what we did was basically when I was 15, like secondary school, we basically went to a building. The school, it was like a music school,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like we had like subjects that were adept. For instance, I don't know, instead of mathematics, we had like sound physics,
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Like everything was adapted to like the musical program and stuff like this. And it was in the same building, like the theory lessons and percussion lessons. And yeah, like our teacher, it was like, he's very, how can I put, he's very connected to the school and the students, and he lives it very intensively, which is great, if you know how to handle with it. And in that sense, of course, we spend a lot of times in those rooms, and we were young, and we had like all the colleagues and stuff like this. So we of course we did our things. I mean, there are so many histories we still do it, with people that study there. Like we could sit for hours and hours only telling about histories about it. But yeah, it was a very intense time of my life, like when we did this first competition, the duo competition, we would have like lessons every day, and it was like in August, basically had no summer, and it paid off because it really helped for us, and it was like such a learning process. But I mean, I still keep in touch with basically everyone I studied there with, and it was a very intense period in my life.
Okay, so folks, I'm sorry, you'll probably get to hear this if you go visit those spaces where stories are shared, but in these public spaces, virtual, we will not share any dirty details from what happened.
I mean, it doesn't make sense. Like if you don't know all the characters involved, it's never like a single story of just me doing something. It's like always.
Okay, well, we'll start going around and interviewing everyone, and by the time we reach your last classmate, they will have to deliver the story because we'll know all the actors.
You guys know the term mutually assured destruction? Like, I've got all the garbage on you for whatever you got on me.
Yeah, basically, we all have a pact of confidential. It's like what stays there, what happens there, it stays there forever. Only the walls can tell the secrets.
Well, that's fantastic. That's good human character. Awesome. Well, Agostinho, thank you so much for being our guest.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure to talk to you. Congratulations. Sorry?
I hope to see you all like live soon.
Same. We hope so too, and we hope we get to hear you perform live for us soon too. Thanks, podcasters. Thanks, listeners. And we will talk to you and hear you soon in episode 274. Bye.
Bye.